Welcome ladies and gentlemen to the Witch Doctor skill video. In this video, we will be taking a look at the very last primary skill that you get as a Witch Doctor, which is Firebomb. Lob an explosive skull that deals 85% weapon damage as fire to all enemies within 8 yards. So once again, this is an AoE skill. This is your first real AoE skill, which is not affected by a rune to actually turn an AoE. And of course, since it's an AoE skill, it depends on how many enemies you hit for total damage. But its initial damage is only 85%, which make it the lowest DPS skill for singular target. And this is how it looks. In my opinion, this is the most graphically satisfying skill in the Witch Doctor arsenal, because it actually looks pretty cool. We're gonna ignore that salesperson because he's an idiot. Alright, awesome. Let's put our ring back on because I want to kill most things in one hit. Let's find a group of enemies to kill with this skill. Ah! You asked and you shall get. Wonderful. And there you go. That is the Firebomb skill. The very first you can get, The first rune you can get with Firebomb is Flash Fire. Rather than exploding for area damage, each Firebomb can bounce up to 6 additional targets. Damage is reduced by 60. Wow, that'll be insanely horrible. But damage is reduced by 15% per bounce. So that means after the first bounce, here's the damage scale here. First bounce is 85% because that's the first hit. The fifth bounce is now reduced to 70, and then 55, and then 40, 25, and then 10. So the very last target this skill hits will be only doing 10% of your weapon damage. But the total weapon damage, if you get all 6 bounces, I cannot add all that up in my head, so I'm going to use a calculator. Alright. 85 plus 70 plus 55 plus 40 plus 25 plus 10. You get 285% weapon damage as total damage. So that means this skill is technically the most damaging skill if you get it to bounce all the way up to 6 targets and every one of them is doing damage. Alright, let's test it out on this group of enemy over here behind this rusty door. And that did nothing. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. And as you can see, it does bounce from back and forth, which is pretty cool. I kind of like this skill for the bouncing, but not for DPS wise. It's a very unreliable skill for DPS. As you can see from that last attack, the skill actually bounces to the door, and sometimes it even bounces to the door when enemies are standing right next to him. It's kind of weird. It just random targets different things that can jump to. So it's not a very reliable skill to use, in my opinion. Next, roll the bones. Allow the skull to bounce up to 2 times. Now this is a major AoE attack, and I'll show you why. Here, as you can see, it now bounces up to 2 or 3 times, technically, if you count the very first one. Which then just, is a line-based AoE attack. Very effective in, it's more effective if you use it in large group of enemies or huge enemies. But then, if you are fighting one huge enemy, you might as well want to switch skills. And what I mean is, you can see right in between each skill, there is a point where both skills can hit a target. And that's more effective if you use it for a larger target, since they have a bigger hitbox. So all of your maybe 2 of your bounces can hit it, if not 3, if the enemy is large enough. Which then would maybe do 85 times 2, 170% weapon damage to one target if the target is able to be hit by both bounces. Alright, so let's find something to kill. And there you go. Massive AoE attack. That's what this skill was designed for, to wipe out mobs of enemy. So if you're in a dungeon and you know that you have a DPSer already for singular targets, you might want to switch to Firebomb and roll the bones to get massive AoE damage to take out the little minions faster. The third skill rune you get with Firebomb is Fire Pit. The explosion creates a pool of fire that deals 8% weapon damage per second as fire for 3 seconds. So 8% is not that major. So in my little honest opinion, it's not very good. It barely can deal any damage. The initial hit is actually more satisfying than the AoE itself, simply because the AoE is so little damage for it to do any use at all. 8% is way too little, so it really makes this Fire Pit skill completely useless. You would rather use Roll the Bone or Flash Fire than Fire Pit. So they really need to up that damage per second for this Fire Pit skill. So next, Pyro Dice creates a column of flame that spew fire at a closest enemy for 140% weapon damage as fire over 3 seconds. Okay, so here's the thing with this skill. Over 3 seconds. Is that total, or each hit is 140? Hang on, before I blab my mouth, I'm gonna try it, and then you'll see. Okay, so it is over. Okay, as you can see, each hit only did roughly 20 something damage, 30 something damage. So it is over 3 seconds. So the 140% weapon damage is cumulative. That means only after 3 seconds will you get the 140% weapon damage. Oh dear. So here's my little gripe about this skill. That is my little gripe about this skill. If you are able to summon, say, 3 of these columns instead of just 1, that would be a lot more powerful skill to use. But since you can only summon 1 at a time, it makes this skill completely useless. You would rather use Roll the Bone, Flash Fire, or even Fire Pit. But then I already said Fire Pit, you would rather use Roll the Bone or Flash Fire. So both of these skills is outmatched by Roll the Bones and Flash Fire. It is a fun skill to use in lower difficulties, but once you get to Inferno and Hell, actually once you just get to Hell, you would not want to have fun using skills anymore, because you would get your ass dragged across the floor by mobs. So these two skills are not worth it. Alright, next, Ghost Bomb. In addition to the base explosion, the skull creates a larger blast that deals an additional 20% weapon damage as fire to all enemies within 28 yards. This is again a massive AoE attack, but the sad part is only 20% damage. And as you can see there, right there, my initial hit did a 111 damage, but there wasn't any of these AoE right here. Oh god damn it! When you get so close. But the AoE attack, you see that range, that the pulse that's actually outside. Yeah, it doesn't actually hit twice. My thought about this skill is that 85% damage, and anyone who's within that 8 yards will also take 20% damage for the secondary explosion, but they don't. The secondary explosion only does damage to enemies that is not within the 80 yards of the original cast, which is very disappointing. I thought the skill would actually be doing 105% damage to anything in that 8 yards, but it doesn't. So that's very, very saddening. Alright, so that has been the Firebomb skills and its skill rune. When we get back, we'll be talking about the very first skill we get for our secondary skill, which is Grasp of the Dead.